Hey everyone, this is going to be our introductory After Effects video of putting down keyframes in files that we prepare in Photoshop. Really quick before we start, here's my cat. I tried to start this video already, but she sabotaged me and I had keyframes set that messed up my video, so we're trying again. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to prepare our Photoshop files. We have the clouds, the Windows landscape, and the robot. You just need to prepare the landscape and the robot. I already did the landscape. I just put a mask in and took out the sky. I did an adjustment layer just for fun. And then for the robot, we're doing the same thing, which I'll do with you guys if you need a refresher for putting masks in to edit out the background. But I'm going to use my magnet lasso first and try to select as much as possible with this tool of what I want to be visible in my mask. Magnet lasso is going to do the best it can, but it's not going to do too good of a job. So we could go back in and fix that later. If I wanted to now, I could add on to my selection. So I'll try to grab this pole. I'm going to hit shift, let go, shift. Add this pole. Where's my end? Oh, there it is. That's probably fine for now. So I'm going to hit the flag button on the right below your layers. Okay, and now I need to go in and fine-tune all of this. You have a couple options to work with. Mainly it's going to be dumping black or white on your image. You also have, if you right-click on that mask, your Select and Mask menu, where you can work with the selection options to add on to or subtract from your mask directly with the visibility of the subtracted stuff. So that's kind of nice. I'll see if this works. Oh, not too well. But once I'm done, I can hit OK, and then I can work in this menu with my paintbrush. And reminder for paintbrush, we have our hard bracket keys. Okay, this is what sabotaged my recording last time. I think we're fine. We have our hard bracket keys that can increase or decrease the size of our paintbrush, and then we also have X that will swap between our black or white color palette. White is going to add on to our selection, black will remove from our selection. So I'm just going to be swapping between the two, try to fine-tune this without taking too much time. Okay, yeah, I have white selected. You might want to play around with which type of paintbrush you have selected. If there's too much of a gradient fall off, it might look a little weird cutting into your piece. So I have a harder edge one on, and then I will go ahead and add a feather afterwards. That'll make this edge look a little bit less chunky. So we'll just do, that looks a little shitty over here, but who cares? We're just here to learn. Okay. As I obsessively actually try to get it. Okay. We will just do that. Check the booty of the robot. And then we'll add a feather. I don't actually know what's going on there. Oh, let's get rid of this thing at the top. That would have looked ridiculous. Okay. So with this, because I have my mask selected on the right side, yours might be above your layers. You can slide that feather slider to make your edge a little less crispy. So I'll probably do it like there-ish. You don't want it too far, otherwise it just looks like creepy, blurry. Okay. So for this, you can just save these as Photoshop files. Photoshop files or PNGs will be fine. I specifically have my landscape having 2 layers to kind of show you how your layers can come in to After Effects and be differentiated. Another key thing before we start in After Effects, because we learned from class yesterday, make sure if you haven't been doing like folder hierarchy or organization, you need to do that for After Effects, especially if you're someone that transfers between like lab and at-home computer to work. In order to transfer your After Effects project, you also have to transfer all of the images and like references that you're pulling into your file. It doesn't just carry that over. You have to have like those files specifically. So you can see I have my After Effects folder, but then I made a robot drive folder. So this is my project folder that is going to have my references. I might have a folder that's for like my audio references, and then I will eventually have my After Effects save file in here too. So if I ever need to pull this somewhere else, I'll just zip this robot drive folder and pull that over. I could purposely mess it up again if we want, if you guys want to see what happens. Okay. So, let me double check that I have everything in my references. Yes, so you can see I have the clouds, I have my robo, and my landscape. So I'm going to close Photoshop because After Effects is pretty demanding. And then what are we doing? We're doing After Effects. Apparently I'm using After Effects 2022, so if yours is a little bit different, that's okay. Just all my Half Moon Joe tabs. I should have clicked. It's fine. Okay, so this means it might crash during it because my stuff is getting full, but we're gonna try to do it anyway. I'll give you the real experience of your computer crashing while you're working. So we're gonna do new project. I'm going to click new composition in the middle of the screen. Here I'm only changing a couple things. I'm gonna give it a name, robot drive. We'll do that. I'm keeping it at that 1080 setting, and then the only other thing I'm going to be changing is down in the duration. I want it to be 5 seconds. So it's gonna be this like second from the right slot of numbers. The first one's hours, second one's minutes, third one's seconds, and then it's milliseconds or whatever. So we're just changing that to 05 for the duration. The background color, this can be whatever you want. This is not going to impact the end product that you're making. It's just for like visibility while you're working. So mine's gonna be magenta. Okay, so our After Effects screen, really quick tour. This middle is like your working area. This bottom huge part, this is your timeline. This is like a visualization of what is going to be happening across these 5 seconds. The bottom left, this is basically like our layers area. This is going to have all of the layers and components that we have in our file. We'll have like settings on the right side. This left side is going to be elements that we're pulling into the file that we can add to our layers. Stuff that's up here isn't automatically in our composition. We have to pull it down into it. So that's what we're going to do first. We're going to import our file. So we're going to do file, import file. And depending on your type of file, you are going to import it a slightly different way. So, oh, first these are my downloads. I want to make sure I go to my folder that I prepared, and I'm pulling from there because this is where it matters. So I have JPEGs and then I have Photoshop files. You can see for my JPEG, my only option is footage, so that's what I'll do. For Photoshop files, I have footage and then composition. Basically, footage will give you like a flattened version of your Photoshop file. So if I had my landscape and my robot together on one file, it wouldn't give me like separate control over them. It would be just a plain image. But with composition, it'll give me control over my separate layers. So cloud, I'm just gonna do footage and import it because it's just a JPEG. And then import file. For the window landscape, I'm going to do composition, retain layer sizes to show you guys how it pulls in the different layers. And then I'm just gonna hit OK. And then pull in my last thing. This one, it doesn't really matter which one you pull in, but oh, if I grab the Photoshop file. But I just think it's a good habit to choose a composition one because a lot of my students will accidentally choose footage and won't know what's going on when they can't edit the layers. So you can see my composition is still blank, even though I pulled those files in. They are simply in my like project stash that I can reference to. So to pull them in, so for clouds, I could just left click it, drag that down into my layers, and now it's in my composition. Everything that we have is like way bigger than our composition size. So we're first going to scale it down. To zoom in and out, I'm just using the mouse wheel. And then to pan on the screen, I'm holding in middle mouse button. So when I'm zooming around the screen, I'm either rolling my mouse wheel or I'm holding in middle mouse to wiggle around. So I'm going to zoom out so I can see that boundary of my image. Click on one corner, hold down shift. You can see when I am clicking down and scaling something in After Effects, it does not do it proportionally. So if I hold down shift, then I can do so. For your cloud image, don't scale it down to the exact size of our image. We want to animate it moving, so we need it a little bit bigger so that I have space to move it around on that composition. So this one, I'm just scaling it down to a bit bigger than our composition. Now we can pull down our landscape. You can see for our robot and our landscape, it brought in two separate things. One is a composition, one is a folder that has our layers. The composition technically has our layers available. It just has a nice and like just like a smaller footprint on our screen that we can open up to work with the layers. But if you only needed to like pull in one thing from that and didn't need the whole composition, you could go ahead and drag just like our robot in instead of the full composition. If you bring in that full composition, it'll kind of think the robot is humongous, like that full size of the image. If I just pull in the robot specifically, it'll only like kind of crop around the robot, you can see. I'll show you a little bit of the difference because I'll bring in the composition of the landscape, but I just dragged in that, opened up the layers, dragged in that layer that is specifically the robot. I also have to scale this down. That's probably a fine size. I won't know until I have the landscape. Okay, So for the landscape, let's pull the composition down so I could show you how it differs. This one's also too big, so let's scale it down. This one you can scale to be, oh my goodness, scale it down to be the size of our composition. And you can see, like, to be able to select something, you have to make sure that that layer is selected, and then it has those little squares you could grab to scale it around. Oh my gosh, my blue sky looks ridiculous. I should have made it pink too. So, with this composition version of my landscape, rather than pulling those layers down, I can actually open that up into its own composition and can work with it isolated, that is then reflected in this file. If that's confusing, you don't have to worry about that now. The only thing you have to worry about is if you did pull in the composition, if you're ever working and you notice everything disappeared of what you were working on, you might have accidentally opened this isolation mode. And to go back, you'll just go down to your layers area, and you can see now I have like a little folder icon for my robot drive and one for my landscape. So you just have to click back on your landscape. So if that ever happens, you just accidentally open that up, you could just click over, you didn't lose everything. Yet, that is. Oh, with that in mind, maybe let's do a save as. And I'm going to make sure I'm saving in that folder I prepared. Robot drive. Robot drive. So now you can see I have my references in robot drive in that folder. So again, if I want to work somewhere else, I grab that huge folder. Not the huge one, but the one that contains everything. Okay, so let's start working in After Effects. If you couldn't see one of the things you pulled down to your layers, all you have to do is physically drag those layers around. It's kind of the same as Photoshop and Illustrator. What's on top is on top of your visibility screen. So let's animate the sky moving first. We're gonna just have it, the clouds like drifting across the sky. So start it off where it's kind of positioned to one side of the screen, and it's gonna end up on the other side. That's why we had it a little bit bigger. Key thing with After Effects is you have to account for time before you make any changes to what you're doing. So this blue slider at the bottom, this is kind of our timekeeper to say what moment in time we're in. If you ever like don't see your full 5 seconds, you might have accidentally grabbed one of these other blue toggles instead of the timekeeper one. You guys don't need to mess around with these, but we have two, this thicker one, the skinnier one. This thicker one is if you just want to like isolate just like 1 second of time and just have that play on a loop rather than the full 5 seconds. So if you're workshopping one part and you just want to see that, rather than having to go through the full 5 seconds, it'll just play that duration. So if you're missing something, just make sure that's fully spread out for that whole 5 seconds. This one at the top, it more like increases the amount of space that like a smaller duration of time takes up down here to also like dial in on your details while you're working. So if you're ever missing something, you might have accidentally moved those, just make sure they're taking up that full space. Okay, so to animate the sky, first we're going to want to make sure we're at 0 seconds in time, because we want to tell After Effects where our sky is at 0 seconds. And then we're going to open up our clouds layer to get to some of the options that we can set keyframes for. Keyframes are like are going to store information for After Effects to reference to like animate with. So for this, we're going to be doing, it's like location on the page, it's position. So to open up our clouds, you're going to hit that little side arrow and open up where you can see transform. Open that up and it's going to give you all of your options that you can work with for our JPEG. Something that's going to be important for the robot is, first thing you want to do is set your anchor point. We don't really need to do that for the sky because it's just moving left to right. But if it's something that's going to have a little bit more intricacy in how you're animating it, you probably want to set your anchor point first. So just pay attention to that. If you set it after you've like done other keyframes, like for position, you'll just have to adjust them a bit after. Okay, so to set our first keyframe, again, make sure you are 0 seconds in time. And now we can hit this stopwatch next to position. And you can see that made these blue diamonds. That is our keyframe. So at 0 seconds, it's at this number location. If I move my image around, you can see it's storing a new number. So a key thing for when I am setting these position keyframes is I have to choose my moment in time first, and then I move my image to make the new data. If I move this now to make my like end point, you can see it's just overwriting the information I had stored previously. So the order is set your time, then set your changes. So for this, we're just setting one at 0. Then we're going to drag our timekeeper over to 5, as far to the right as you could go. And then we're going to click on our image. If you want to make it go just like perfectly horizontal, you could hold down Shift. And then you could see when I let go, it has this line between these 2 points of where that focal point was lying. And now if I hit spacebar, you could see After Effects is filling in that in-between space to have it gradually go between those 2 positions. Depending on how much time you give it to go across that distance and how far of a distance is going to determine your speed. So if I squash this in, oopsies, and said it only had 1 second instead of 5 seconds to go that same distance, you can see that it goes much faster. So that's all we're doing for the sky. We're just setting 2 position keyframes, one at the start, one at the end. And now we're going to do a similar thing with the robot, but then make it a little bit more complicated. Also with these transformations, you also have hotkeys to open up one at a time. So P is for position, but if you ever forget them, you can always open them manually with those drop down. So for robot, we're not changing the landscape at all. You can actually lock that in place if you want to. But for robot, we're gonna open up our transform, and we're gonna be setting a position, a scale, and a rotation animation for this, so that it's going to be coming down the hill, be getting larger as it approaches, and also like, because it's going to be going on a curve, we want to rotate it on the path so it looks a little bit more natural. As I was saying before, we do want to set our anchor point first, because if I rotate my robot right now, you can see it's rotating around that anchor point. I want it to be rotating around where it's going to be touching the ground, so that it makes a little bit more sense when I'm rotating. So to set our anchor point, you want this like crosshair icon at the top left of your screen. Then you can click on your anchor point and slide it down. I'm going to kind of put it at the middle center of that center wheel as like my center of gravity, I guess. And when you're done with anchor point, immediately go back to your arrow selection to make sure you don't accidentally reset it again. But now you can see when I rotate, it's rotating around that bottom point. Okay. So let's do its position keyframes first. So robot is going to start on this left side of the screen, come down to this like front part of the meadow. So the order is set your time. So first I want 0 seconds. Then I could set my position. And because I haven't set a keyframe for this yet, I need to click on that stopwatch next to position, and now you can see I'm recording my position across time. Now we'll have it go forward to like 4 seconds. Set my time first. Then I can set the position I want it to end up in. So I'm just going to have them come to a stop like in the foreground. And you can see now if I hit space, oh, that lagginess is just it loading the screen. You could see him coming down the screen. I want him to follow this curve rather than going straight across these points, so I can actually give some of those handles like we do use in Illustrator to have this line work on a curve. So to do that, you're going to right click one of those points that are recording its I just forgot what it's called, anchor points. It's anchor points location. So if you right click it, do keyframe interpolation, and then for spatial interpolation, make sure it's set to one of the Bezier options. So yours might be on linear automatically, so set it to one of those Bezier options. Hit OK, and now you can see we have a handle that we can pull around and affect our curve. So now you can see Robo's going to be going along a curve. I also want it to be kind of like leveling out down here, so I'm also going to work with this one. So right click the point, do keyframe interpolation, change from linear for spatial interpolation to one of the Bezier options. Hit OK, and now I have a handle that I could play around with, and you can see I can physically drag these around on my screen. I can also drag around the points it's ending up and starting with without affecting like my timeline of where it's positioned. So now, oh my god, whenever it stalls I get scared that it's about to crash. Let's save again, everyone. Okay. So now, last thing we're gonna do with its position before we move to scale is, you can see it's going from like 5 miles per hour to 0 abruptly. It's not slowing down, so to make it look a little bit natural, we wanna have it slow down into that keyframe. There's like a visualization of its speed along its path. You can see these dots are evenly spaced because it's going the same exact speed across time, but we kind of want it to slow down. So to do that, you're going to, down in your timeline, right click that end keyframe, do keyframe assistant, and you want to do easy ease in. You can see we have 3 options: easy ease, ease in, and ease out. How I rationalize them is paying attention to where our timekeeper is like interacting with them. So in our case, it's going into it of how we want it being affected. So we're going to choose easy ease in, and that's going to have it slow down to 0 for its speed. If we were having it like start on the screen and we wanted it to speed up, you can see the timekeeper is moving out of that keyframe. So that's when I would choose easy ease out. So it's speed up and then slow down. The easy ease option would have it, like if I had a in-between point where I was having the robot turn around, I would want it to slow down into that turn and then speed up out of it. That one would be easy ease. It'll do both on either side of that keyframe. So right click that end keyframe, do keyframe assistant, do easy ease in, and now you can see that I have a bunch of those dots at the end because our robot is taking longer to finish that part now. So you can see it's slowly gliding into that end position. Looks a little bit more natural. There are ways to like play around with this, but we won't go into that right now. Okay, we're just going to do 2 more things on the robot, and then we'll add text to play around with opacity. So for scale, this is going to be pretty simple. It's just going to be repeating this workflow of set your time first, then set your scale information, then reset your time, set your new scale information. So I want my robot to probably be about this size at the end, so I might set my keyframe. It doesn't really matter which one you want to set first, but I'm going to set mine at 4 first. Hit the stopwatch next to scale, and now at 4 seconds it's going to be this size. If I wanted to increase it a little bit to emphasize it, I can hold down left click and drag to the right on those scale numbers to play around with what scale it's going to be at that time. You can see next to those scale numbers I have a little chain link. If I click that, it will toggle those scale numbers separately, but if you have the chain link on, if you left click and drag it left and right, it's going to scale it proportionally. So that's my end position. I want to set my start scale so it's smaller in the background. So first I need to set my time to 0 seconds. I'm actually going to have it on the screen so I can see the size and to show you that we can move our keyframes around. But this is going to be my start size. It'll be a little guy. And I want this keyframe to actually be at 0. So once I have my keyframes down, I can move them around on the screen. So I can move that to 0. If for some reason I wanted it to stay the same size and then like pop into a huge version, I could squish that over there and you could see it like pops open. But for this I'm just going to have it scooched on that left side. You can see it's growing in size. Because we had easy ease for the speed, we also want it for scale, just so that it scales up with the speed. It doesn't look too wonky, but... So we're going to right click it, keyframe assistant, easy ease in. And now our robot should slowly increase in size at the end. Okay, so last thing for the robot movement. Gosh, it's like really shooting out over the hill. It's booking it. So last thing for the robot, it's kind of like looks a little silly how it's just staying level this whole time. So we're going to actually have it rotate along this curve like a little minecart on some tracks. So this, we're going to be hopping around a bit more in setting keyframes rather than just a rotation at the start or rotation at the end. We're going to have to kind of look at the path and see where we need to set keyframes. The key thing with this is you want to set as few as possible just so they are smooth transitions, but it's just going to be kind of eyeballing it. So one of my more extreme like rotations is going to be right here, so I'll probably have one here, one at the start, one at the end for the beginning, and then see how it looks in between. So at the end we know we want it to be this rotation, so let's set our time, click on that stopwatch. If you want to change this rotation at all, you can click that number and hold it down, after that first zero means how many full rotations you have. So if you want it to like completely spin, you could increase that. But the one after that is going to be like 0 to 360. So under one full turn. So let's set our start rotation is just going to be like, I'm trying to make them parallel with that path. So you can see it's not changing much, but now let's put one at the peak of that curve. And again, I'm just holding down left click and dragging left or right to have my robot match it. So now let's see how that looks. Well, it's tipping like a little bit too early. So I might also set one between those two to have that nicely matched up. And you can see I can also just scrub my timeline a bit with this rather than having it play to check it out. I think I'll do one here as well to have it rotate in. We'll see how that looks. That looks nice. The end's pretty extreme, but it's fine. Maybe when it gets to that grass, I'll have it start leveling out more. Is that fine? Does that look okay? Yoink. Okay. So that's all we're doing with robot. It has the position set. The position was altered so that it goes on a curve and then it slows down. For scale, we have it where it increases in size over that time that it's moving, and then for rotation, we just adjusted it and set keyframes to follow that curve a little bit more parallel so that it looks a bit more natural in its movement. The last thing that I want to show you guys is working with opacity. So to do that, we're going to just have text appear on the screen right after the robot stops moving. It's going to like shout something out at us. So what we're going to do is we're going to just work with, you can see we have like shape, pen tool, and text we can put in within After Effects. So I'm just going to hit that text tool and oh, we cannot see. Sorry, we're back. This is going to be awkwardly sliced in. I had a classic issue that you guys have where you have an issue and it's not working and then you call over someone to help and then it works. So it's fine. It's fine now. It just works. So with my, oh my goodness, type tool, I can just type in, oh, I typed in 00 instead of hello. It's not screaming help anymore. It's matured. Oh, I like, sorry. We're fine, okay. Robot is screaming appropriate things. You could change the font if you want. Oh, we were having it speak in robot before. There we go. Oh, I like how hello looks miserable in robot. We can change the color of it if we'd like. So we could have it scream in pink. Could change the outline for visibility. I should do like a dark blue to pull that sky into it. Okay. So at 4 seconds, I want it to scream out this message. I do not want it before. So if we, the reason opacity works a little bit differently is if I put 0 opacity in the beginning and 100% opacity at 4 seconds, it's going to gradually appear like the rest of our transformations. So, for example, if I want at 4 seconds to be 100, at 0 seconds I want it to be 0. If I hit space, it's gonna slowly fade into existence. So instead, for opacity, for most cases, unless you are having something gradually shift in appearance, if you want something to kind of like pop out of nowhere, you want to set that 0 opacity right before the 100% opacity. So now at 3.99, oh wait, 3.29, oh, it goes up to 3, that's weird. So at 3.29, I have it set at 0. At 4 seconds, it's 100. So now you can see it's just gonna like pop out of nowhere, seemingly. Okay, so that's all we're gonna do for animation on this. If you want to add audio, where at the end where it's screaming, an audio also plays, or like an audio plays throughout the whole thing, I encourage you to do that too. It's gonna be the same thing of pulling in any files. You're gonna pull in like an MP3 that you download into your references, then you could pull it down into your files and you can move it around and have it play at specific parts. Oh, that's something I didn't show you guys. Maybe I'll show you on Wednesday, but you can like move around when something will be visible. So like with what I just did, my clouds won't be here until I start their little visibility moment. So if you want to do that with the audio, feel free to. So last step is just going to be making our like output file of this. So right now we just have like our working file, like our Photoshop file, Illustrator file. We're gonna have our After Effects file, but then we're also gonna have like our JPEG of it, which is gonna be an MP4. MP4s are gonna be more of a kind of like a JPEG style, where it's a more compressed version of your file. It'll have visuals, it'll have audio, it'll record the time. If you want a high, like a non-compressed version, you would do a .mov of your file. For submitting all of your assignments, please do MP4 just for the sake of me downloading all of your assignments. Okay, so to do this, make sure you save first. This might crash your program. So save first. Oh, hopefully this computer has Media Encoder on it. And we are going to use a different program instead of After Effects for this because it's better. So you're going to click Composition, Add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. And it's going to take a while to open up. And it might crash After Effects. If it does, it still might load your program into this. If it doesn't, you can manually pull it in if you need to. Okay, so if you do need to pull it in, you could find your save file over here and load that in. You can see my screen already opened up, but it took a little bit while for this upper right hand portion to fill in, so you might have to wait even longer for it to open, for it to automatically pull in your file. But then you can see I have my robot drive file filling this space. So this is the video I want to render. You can have a list of things here of like an order of rendering stuff. I don't think I need to make any changes on mine. You want the H.264. You either want the high quality 1080 or that high bitrate one. I'm just gonna leave it, but either choose that high 1080 or that Matt Choice high bitrate. And then you want to make sure it's saving as an MP4. I highly recommend clicking on this output file to see where it's being saved, because I've noticed a lot of people have trouble finding the file after it's saved it. So just look at where it's directing it. If you have been saving in that like specific project folder, it should be going there. And you can see it's saving it as an MP4. And so when we are ready, we're just going to hit that green arrow. And now it's going to take even more time to render depending on your computer's brain power and how complicated of a file you have. And then when you're done, mine should be in this robot drive folder. And that's my MP4 right there that we could play. Beautiful. It's sad. It's so sad. Okay, that's all for today's class. We'll be working with an Illustrator file on Wednesday.